But you've got all the dates and everything you need there.
Now, the night missions you were just referring to.
Yeah.
So they sent the planes out one at a time in 15-minute intervals?
Yeah.
And why was that?
Well, at night, you didn't dare fly formation because you can't see well enough.
Oh.
And there's too much danger of colliding
Collision.
with the other ships. It was hard enough in the daytime. Now, this tells that we were called the Liberandos.
Yep.
And the 376 Bomb Group. In fact, I have our mission history book, which is an 8 by 10 book, about this size. And oh, by the way, this is for you to keep it in.
Oh, thank you.
It's about that size and it's about that thick.
Didn't the Liberandos, didn't they fly out of Libya also?
Yes.
Originally?
They were based in Benghazi.
And weren't they painted like a pink color or
That was the desert.
desert pink or something?
The desert pink. In Dayton, Ohio.
Yep,
at the
strawberry
Air Force Museum.
ditch.
It was our 512 squadron.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was in the 514th, and the Strawberry Bitch, and there's, I don't have it in there. It's in one of my later chapters. My mission diary is 160 pages.
Wow.
And I did all this myself. That came out of the top of my head.
That's really dang good.
Everything in there.
Now, I'm looking at this picture and it says your 30th mission, you were in the nose turret?
Yes. I would fly extra. The way we worked this, when we went overseas, the pilot always had to fly about 3 missions before the rest of the crew. And the first 2, he flew co-pilot seat with an experienced pilot to check him out and make sure he was a good pilot. Then on the 3rd one, they'd let him take over and fly it. Now the Bombardier also flew at least 1 extra mission. I think the navigator did 2. Co-pilot didn't have to. That meant that they were ahead of us in the number of missions we wanted to finish together.
That was my next question.
So, and if we were sick a day or something, we'd put on the board to fly extra missions. So I was sick one time, and then I flew 2 extras with a different crew when someone else was sick. And I flew 1 mission in the tail and 3 in the nose. Never flew in the top turret. Top turret was for tall men.
In the flight engineer, right?
Well, not really. In our case, the flight engineer stayed right up on behind the pilot and co-pilot constantly because he monitored the fuel transfer. And
so you had a separate gunner for the top turret?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And he was the assistant flight engineer. Then the nose turret man was the assistant radio man, backup radio man. The radio man flew in the waist in our plane. He didn't get in his kind of a little office type thing. But the only time the radio man went into that little office during a mission on our crew was when we were lead ship. And we flew about 8 missions before we became a lead ship. We were a good crew. There's no nonsense with our crew. No goofing around or anything like some crews did. And we paid attention. After 5 missions, we were lead crew.
Wow.
And so we led day after Christmas. We were bombing in Brenner Pass. We had a 5-day intensive campaign up at Brenner Pass. Now, Brenner Pass would bring from Austria down into Italy, would bring supplies for the German ground forces. And our intent was to bomb those bridges and destroy them. The day after Christmas, we took over the lead. We were the deputy lead. They lost their autopilot. Without the autopilot, you can't lead, because your bombardier controls the plane through the autopilot.
Okay.
And if the autopilot isn't working, you just can't level a plane off without it.
Okay.
And everyone dropped on them. Your lead bombardier targeted, and everybody, when they opened, you'd watch them. As soon as their bomb bay doors opened, we'd call out, bomb bays open, and then open the doors, and when their bombs dropped, our bombs dropped. By watching. Now, on that particular one, we had 100% hits.
Wow.
And we had, on that mission, over 100 holes in our plane.
Holy cow.
We were hit so hard. We were in intensive flak. And and it tells this one, it was, we flew Christmas Day and we started down. And then we got back so late, there was no dinner for us.
Oh.
The guys ate the dinner, there was just scraps left. We didn't have anything to eat. And we went to the base, let's see, on Christmas Day, we bombed at Innsbruck, Austria, all marshalling yards. And when we got over to the flight board, we found out, boy, we're up for the mission tomorrow. And so on the day after Christmas, we flew again. That's the one there at Brenner Pass. And we really got chewed up really bad.
So when the flak was going off, could you like see and feel the flak detonating near you?
Yeah, I was stuck in my turret.
You were in the
I
ball at
couldn't
the
get
time?
out, yeah. And I turned the turret on and it just started spinning. And
That's not a good thing.
I turned my handles to the left to try to stop it. And it gradually slowed down and just kept creeping. Now what happened was that your turret, when you get in, your guns are pointing down, so the door will open. You get in, close the door, and when it started, the guns crept up, just only about 4, 5, or 6 inches, but your door is below the rim of the turret, it can't be opened anymore.
Right.
And so I worked on it to try to get it freed. There is a crank up inside, but this was a relatively new plane. That crank couldn't be opened. I couldn't pry it open. I had nothing to pry with. And so I called up to the radio man in the plane, told him what to do. Well, he knew there was a crank up there too, but he panicked. And here I am stuck in a turret. So I said, well, Brownie, pump me up into the plane. So he did. 3 shells exploded where the turret had been. And it just throws that plane up in the air. And I was in there for, I think we were 7 solid minutes over the target on the bomb run. And all that time, that plane is rocking and up and down. And we had, I was trying to tell you, with the pilot in his coffin seat, there was a hole on the side of the plane right behind the pilot, 4 feet long, where it ripped the plane open, and it hit the back of his seat, knocked it back. The co-pilot had to take over. The pilot was out of action. He couldn't even reach the rudder pedals when that happened. And we were pretty badly shot. And the engineer he had a habit that when we dropped our bombs, you would look from the flight deck, you look down through the bomb bay. And he'd yell bombs away to make sure all the bombs were out. If they weren't out, that was my job, to get up out of that turret
And go kick them off?
Kick them out. But I couldn't get up out of the turret.
I'd
I'm
make the
stuck.
bombardier do it. It was his bombs.
Yeah, but I'm stuck in a turret. I can't get out, for all that time. Finally, the flight engineer was hit in the head. And he says, bombs away. Oh, I'm hit. And he's down on the flight deck. Fortunately, it wasn't all that serious, but it was. But at least he was hit. And so the bombardier, after dropping his bombs and everything, came back and assisted with the flight engineer, making sure he was okay. And a few minutes later, I felt a tap on my shoulder. He had come back, cranked the turret down where it belonged, opened up the door, and at this time, I'm just sitting there wondering what's going to happen when we land.
Wow.
So it was interesting.
So I have to ask you this, and forgive me in advance, but how many times did you poop your pants?
Never.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I just about pooped my pants just listening to you.
No, never. We never panicked. I didn't. I don't think only the radio man did that one time. Now another time, it was the mission before or after, right about this same. These were pretty tough missions. And another time, he was throwing out chaff, or the tinsel, and as he was, I was looking out I think we were in a radar ship. We were lead ship again here. This was a Mickey ship.
I was going to ask you if it was the Mickey ship.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were the Mickey ship. We flew Mickey ship several times. It'll tell in there the 100s of the Mickey ships when we were leading the mission. I didn't always tell the plane number, but if it was plane number 100, it was the Mickey ship. And like here's 69 Gin, ship 69 Gin. And this will tell if the plane had a name, it'll give it, and what position we were flying in.
Oh, okay.
And so forth.
Okay.
But anyway, this particular one, I noticed you had to reach way back to get the pieces, the package flag. So I thought, well, I'll just stow my gun. So I stowed my gun. There's a strap to fasten it up.
And then you're flying, what position are you flying?
At this time I was in the waist because the Mickey took care of the ball,
ball,
place the ball. And so I would get the flag thing, the tinsel, and hand it to him, and he put it out. Because it was relatively calmish.
Where would you throw the tinsel out of?
There's a little panel,
Oh.
and you just push it out the side of the plane. And all of a sudden, he had on a flak suit. I didn't, but he had a flak suit on. And he was like right beside me here. And I saw a puff from his back. Well, a piece of flak had come through, hit him in the back, and rocked him forward. And he looked over at me, and I shook my head at him, that I wasn't fooling around or anything. And so I looked over there, and I thought, gee, now that looked kind of suspicious. I looked at my gun turret, or my gun rather, and the sight. That flak had hit the gun sight. Now, I would have been standing right there, like the gun sight's up here. It would have got me right here. No protection there. Had I not gotten down to help him.
You have to be one of the luckiest guys I have ever met in my life. Holy cow!
I've got a piece of plaque up there in my room. about that big. I went and found the piece.
How many missions did you do?
I have 31 sorties, and we flew so far that if we went on the longer missions, you know, like up to Vienna or Hallmarshton Yard or up
You get
in
credit
Boston,
for 2 missions, wouldn't you?
we get a credit for
But you
double.
did-
I had actually 48 missions,
But you actually did 31.
but I actually did 31 sorties. for
That's
those
31
40.
missions and more than
Yeah.
I could have done.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
and we weren't afraid. We had no fear. We were too dumb.
I was going to ask you, like when I asked you about being scared and whatnot, was it because you were so well trained? Was it because you were too dumb to be scared? Was it because you were too busy to be scared? Because I've actually spoken to combat guys, ground troops,
Yeah.
and they said that, you know, right in the middle of battle, they didn't have time to be scared. They were too damn busy doing everything else.
That's part
They
of
got
it.
scared afterwards when they realized, holy crap, you know, what could have happened.
We never thought about it. Never talked about it.
Wow.
In our crew, we never talked about anything that happened. Now, this same mission the day after Christmas, the tail gunner, this is about one of the few times anyone talked about something. He says, I'm sitting here in a turret. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, the front of my turret exploded outward. And he said, a shell went right up through, right in front of me. And he said, I got to thinking, looked down at my arm, it missed my arm by that much. He says, it just missed my elbow. And he said, I saw the hole in the turret where that shell went through.
That was in the tail?
Tail gunner. But in the tail, when we'd ride the tail, we never closed the doors. There are doors behind you in the turret. We never closed them. The reason is that all you have to do if you had to get out of that tail in a hurry, if the plane were hit and you had to jump out, you could do a backward somersault. To fall out. Just lean back and fall out onto your back and turn, and you're right by the hatch.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so that was an easy escape. Now in the Ballturret, with me, you aren't going to make it because your chute's up in the plane.
Oh, that's right too. I forgot.
There's no room in there.
You couldn't wear your
No,
chute.
there's no room in there. You can't wear a flak suit. I mean, you can barely fit in there. No, I'm not very big, and if you got a big person, they couldn't even fit in the turret. You couldn't even with a shoehorn, you couldn't get them in there.
I was going to ask you if you were in the Ballturret because you're a smaller guy.
Yeah, we always smaller guys. Most of us, we were the armor gunner on the plane, and my training was that I could dismantle, and I could tell you by listening what was wrong with any 50 caliber machine gun you were shooting. And I could tell you what part was causing the problem and so forth. And I could dismantle it and fix that gun with the heavy gloves on,
Wow.
blindfolded.
Wow. Did you get to wear one of those blue bunny suits?
Not in.
No.
Now we did, our suits were pretty good. Well, there's a picture there, but they were well insulated.
Did you have the all leather suit?
No,
No?
they were too cold.
The leather ones?
Oh, they were terrible.
Wow.
Yeah,
They look like they're about a foot thick.
yeah, no, they weren't good enough.
I'll be darned.
No, I had 3 pairs of gloves on. I had nylon gloves, and then heavier like work gloves, and then a real heavy gloves on top of that. And
You
even
probably
then-
still got cold, didn't you?
Yeah, even that, and then the heated suit and so forth. Yeah, but sometimes, now like with me in the Ballturret, the other guys, they could adjust the rheostat. With me, I had to guess before I got in the turret. So I'd have to set the rheostat on what I thought it should be. Well, every plane is different. You get some of the old ones, and the rheostat may be really weak and not throwing enough electricity and so that it's not heating really well.
So all the missions you flew, were all the planes that like the J model that had the turret in the nose also?
Yeah.
All your missions were in that kind of plane?
Well, even the D's had, they remodeled them.
Oh, okay, because the
Yeah.
D's I knew as having like the
Yeah,
greenhouse.
Liberando's Boomerang, we flew in its 124th mission.
Wow.
That plane, on the 124th, when we flew it, it had never turned back,
Wow.
and which is rare.
And what was the name of that plane?
Liberando's Boomerang.
Boomerang, okay, that's it.
And
What was Strawberry Bitch so famous for? Why is she in the museum?
There is a story about it.
Did you actually
She was
see her?
actually back for scrap, and she was in, I think, Nevada. They had her in that, where they parked all these ones that were going to scrap.
Mhm.
And she had been there for about 6 months, and they were looking for a plane to put in the museum, and they just went and got her and brought her there. Now, she had a mission up in Naples out of Benghazi, and her mission in Naples was a tough one. Really, they were in here very heavy flak, and she lost an engine or two, I think, in that. Anyway, they got her back, okay. It was badly shot up. They said they got up on the top of the plane and they could look right down into the gas tanks and see the gasoline sloshing around in there. That it opened up the wing on top, and it was real badly shot up.
That is incredible.
And then they fixed it up pretty good, and they paint that plane about every 2 or 3 years, another desert pink again.
Mm-hmm.
They said, but it's not really desert pink anymore. It's whatever they
Yeah,
can come
I've
close
seen
to.
pictures, and it's just a weird
Mhm.
color.
Now, we have, those of us who are Liberando's people, if we get to Dayton and call them, they'll open the plane, let us go in it.
Really?
But the problem is, the museum doesn't open until, I think, 11 o'clock or so, and they want you there by 8. Well, heck, I was at my daughter's house, which is some distance away. Well, I didn't want to go there 2 hours before the rest of the family,
Mm-hmm.
or have them just sitting around, so I didn't go in. But we had the right because we were Liberando's people.
See, I thought those planes on display, I thought they were gutted. I didn't know.
They're not.
I had no idea.
No, they're not. This plane was not gutted. It was what was left of it.
Right.
Now, when we flew back home, and now what happened in May, this was before the armistice in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They decided that the Liberandos were going to come back intact to the States and train to fly B-29s and go to the Pacific. Those of us who had too many missions, and we were only 5 sorties away from finishing, we had 30 already, and the limit was 35 sorties we could get out.
Mm-hmm.
We were transferred to another group, but our pilot finished his missions on the last mission for the Liberandos.
Oh.
Well, he goes home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't blame him. He wanted to be married. He was had been dating a nurse, and then they wanted to be married. And he said, "Oh, fine, go ahead. More power to you." Well, here we are without a pilot. We tried to get the co-pilot to take over the crew, and he said, "No." He said, "I won't do that." And so,
Why wouldn't you do it?
I don't know. He just didn't want to, and which was okay. I mean, it's his privilege, and but that meant we had to fly as extras. Well, heck, yeah, there weren't that many extras. There was only about another 2 or 3 weeks of the war left. I think I only flew one more in that length of time. And the crew I flew with, that mission I flew home with. Now we ferried these planes back home. We didn't leave them over there.
Right.
And we got a plane. One of the guys looked at the flight log on that plane. He says, "Guys," he says, "this plane has over 200 hours of combat time on every one of our 4 engines." Says, "We aren't going to make it back across the ocean with that." And we get to Marrakesh on our way home. Take off from Marrakesh, blew a cylinder and caught fire. And we're 300 feet off the ground, not even not even nicely up. The flames are going back past the tail.
Wow.
And we stand there in the waist of the ship looking out at those flames. And the pilot turned it around and brought it in, landed. He said every fire truck and everything was following us down the runway. And of course, the crazy things like it'll blow up on fire like that. And no, we had a few pretty good experiences.
Apparently so. Holy cow.
One of our planes blew when it landed. They went to Munich, and they were caught in the flak really bad, shot up real bad. And your problem is when you're coming back home and you've been in flak, you don't know the condition of your tires.
That's true, yeah.
And they look fine. They're just like an automobile. If you take the weight off the car, those tires don't look flat.
Yep.
Well, it had a flat tire.
Uh-oh.
Now, that particular mission, if we had delayed action fuses, we had to bring our bombs back. They couldn't drop them that day because they couldn't see the ground. And this is before they didn't have a making ship with them, and they couldn't see the ground, so they were forced to bring them back because with delayed action fuses, you can't drop them if you can't see the target.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was very particular about that. Won't let you drop them in the Adriatic or any other place. Have to bring them back to the base. Now, they came back with a full bomb load. They had 12 men in their ship. They had an extra, I don't know what one of the extras was, but I think it was a fellow on his first mission, another navigator, I think on his first mission, riding just to get experience, plus a cameraman. So with 12 men in the plane, they landed this thing. With that flat tire, it started veering off the runway. Well, our runway had some, wasn't really improved on the sides. If you got off the runway, there were big boulders and stuff out there. You were in bad trouble. Well, the pilot hit the brakes on the other wheel and blew that tire. And it went off the runway and blew. We were sitting in our tent at the time, and those balls just sucked in, and boom, out they went. Well, we ran out of the tent real fast, saw all that smoke, ran down to the flight, to the runway, and I'll never forget that sight. As we ran across the fields there, we could see the medics already out there. They had a pile 5 feet deep of flesh. And I still remember this one guy holding up an arm, or part of an arm, looking at it to see what he could match it to. Of those 12 men, they got enough. Now, there wasn't even one body that was more than just the trunk. Legs were gone, the arms were gone. And we could see them in the meat wagon there on a stretcher. and see the bald head and so forth, and blood all over the place. Pieces of flesh all over that field as we ran across it.
The only saving grace to that was it was quick and they probably never knew a thing.
No, they didn't.
Had no clue.
But the bad part of it was with the stretchers they had, they didn't put them away or anything or clean them up. So what they did, they took them and set them next to the medical unit. So that every mission you flew, here are these bloody stretchers sitting there by the side of the building as you went and checked out your parachute and
Were they put
things.
there as a reminder or something?
I
Or
don't
they
know
just-
whether they would keep us sober or something.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was our practice on our base. I don't know how about all the others, but usually we can get back from a mission. They all usually have donuts and coffee ready. But it was a practice that anybody who wanted to could go to the medical center, and they had shots of whiskey for them. And I don't think not even one of our crew ever went. We were an intense crew. We were all business.
That is, I don't even know what the hell to say. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Absolutely freaking amazing. Let me turn this recorder thing off.
Okay.
People are gonna love to hear this one. Oh, they're gonna love to hear this. Hang on a second.